Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to provide you with an update as to what's happening in the economy in Cuba. Now, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you'll know that we've been talking about Cuba for the last 3 years, and there have been some serious problems. But over the past few months, those problems have accelerated. And recently, we have seen nationwide blackouts. And those blackouts are partly as a result of the fact that the electricity generation infrastructure in Cuba is now very old and decrepit. Many of those plants were built around 50 years ago, and they had an expected life of around 25 to 30 years. And unfortunately, they haven't been well maintained. So we're starting to see failure of some of that infrastructure. But we're also seeing a problem with regards to Cuba not receiving as much crude oil as it did historically. It was recently reported that in the period between January and November, the imports from Venezuela, which is a fellow communist country, fell by more than 44%. And the problem that Cuba has is that it simply doesn't have enough money to be able to buy that replacement oil in the international markets. Cuba is currently reliant upon friendly gestures from countries like Venezuela, Russia and Mexico, whereby they're given large amounts of oil that they can have on credit or basically just given it for free. And on top of the recent problems that have been reported with regards to electricity, it's now been reported that Cuba is running short at the fuel pumps. And fuel shortages are going to make the situation in Cuba worse because the people of Cuba rely upon fuel in order to get around the country. The public transportation system is based on buses or taxis. So if they don't have fuel, obviously they can't run. And this is now causing a major problem for one of Cuba's biggest industries, tourism. As you're probably aware, Cuba is located in the Caribbean Sea and therefore has a really attractive climate. It's nice and warm and attracts in lots of tourists. This chart shows the annual total of international visitors to Cuba between 2000 and 2023. And what this chart shows is that in the 18 years between 2000 and 2018, there was a gradual increase in total visitor numbers from around 1.8 million to more than 4.7 million. However, unfortunately for Cuba, the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected international travel all around the globe, had a devastating impact on the tourist industry. And in 2021, the total number of international visitors had fallen to less than 500,000. That figure increased to around 1.5 million in 2022, and in 2023, there were around 2.5 million international visitors, which was a similar level that had been achieved in 2010. So basically, the COVID-19 pandemic has put the tourism industry in Cuba back by around 13 years. Now, as I said at the start of today's video, tourism is really important to the Cuban economy. In 2023, it was estimated to contribute around 8% of total GDP, and in 2024, it was forecast that that figure would increase to closer to 9%. However, the recent problems have damaged the tourism industry in Cuba. This table shows the monthly breakdown of the total number of tourists arriving in Cuba in 2024 and 2023 in the period through to October, which is the latest data that's been made available. And what you can see here is that in the first 3 months of 2024, the total number of tourists increased. In January, there was a 4.3% increase. In February, the total numbers were up by just under 12%, and in March, they were up by 6.7%.